First couple of paragraphs. People who grumble about life being unfair have it all wrong. It's life's alter ego, death, that isn't fair. Pick up the paper. Turn on any of the 24-hour news channels. See what I mean? Every day we hear of innocent people suffering horrible and senseless deaths. Vacationing prom queens disappear from tropical islands. Drivers rage against one another, ending their commute prematurely. Families slaughtered by homicidal misfits foraging for money, drugs, or payback. And I hate to think about the god-awful things perpetrated on innocent children. Not that I don't have personal experience in that area. I was sitting in the welcoming shade of Trinity Episcopal Church in the nation's oldest city, shaking sand from my shoe. My back scraped the rough coquina wall flanking Artillery Lane, one of the narrowest streets in a city known for its challenging roadways. I should be enjoying my sabbatical from the office. Instead, my mind skewed uncontrollably toward the dark side. Maybe the smell emerging from my sweat-soaked sock was playing tricks with my brain chemistry. Maybe digging up 500-year-old bones gives you a sharper view of life's fragility. More likely, it's my naturally gloomy nature reminding me that in the end, we're all history. In those two opening paragraphs, I've showed the reader that this is not a romantic comedy, right? Quint obviously is has a dark mood at this point, and in the character arc, which, as you know, the character changes over the course of the book. He is going to change, but he starts out pretty dark. Writers also build suspense by creating a sense of anticipation in the reader, that something is about to happen. Alfred Hitchcock was the master of suspense, and he said, there's no terror in the bang, only in the anticipation of it. I tried to keep that in mind with the second, well, it's actually the third in my series, Hurricane Island, and I sent Quint to Cedar Key, Florida, and I have to change the slide. And this is how chapter 1 of Hurricane Island starts. The roar of the twin Yamahas shattered the early morning stillness. 3 brown pelicans chirped angrily and launched themselves from the far end of the marina with ungainly strokes, circling overhead for a moment before winging across the choppy waters of the bay. A skilled detective learns to pay attention to his gut. As the island hopper rose and fell against the dock, my gut was raising warning flags. I should have paid attention. Well, this is known as foreshadowing. Quint is telling us that something might be happening because his gut is telling him that there's anticipation in coming forward. And it isn't long until that foreshadowing pays off near the end of that chapter. Quint is in Cedar Key with his girlfriend. He's there for a relaxing weekend. It's sort of a reunion. He's met up with his old Navy buddy, Woody Carpenter, who used to be an Atlanta police detective and now runs a charter boat out of Cedar Key. Well, they're off to do some fishing on this day, and the women folk, if you will, his girlfriend, Woody's wife, and a friend are off to do some shopping. Everything's going well. They're out in the water until Woody receives a radio call. Come in, Island Hopper. This is Chief Parsons. Are you there, Woody? Excuse me. Woody reached across the console for the microphone and keyed the button to talk. This is Woody. Go ahead, Joe. What's your 20? Woody scanned the water as though looking for a directional sign. About a mile past North Key, bearing northwest. What's going on, Joe? I need you to turn around and head back to town, pronto. Can it wait? We're on our way to do some fishing. Should be back by 3. Listen to me, Woody. Turn your damn boat around. This isn't a request. You're the chief, Woody said. Now can you tell me what's going on? A low hum sputtered from the speaker while we waited for the chief's reply. Another boat passed us going in the opposite direction and honked twice. I watched the water boiling in the boat's wake, the island hopper jouncing over the waves. The radio crackled to life and Chief Parsons' voice replaced the static. "I'll explain when you get here, but there's been a..." Parsons' voice slipped away again, static hissing and popping through the speaker. I thought we might have lost him before we heard his voice break through once again. "There's been an incident at your house." Well, right away we know something bad has happened. And this gets us into the plot of the story where there's been a murder and a double kidnapping. And it's personal because the double kidnapping is Woody's wife and Quint's girlfriend. And they spend the rest of the book trying to locate them and find the killer. Everything in Hurricane Island, all the action takes place in 24 hours. So there's kind of a ticking clock scenario to that. Going back to Matanzas Bay now. The thriller writer, excuse me, the thriller writer keeps ramping up the action and adding unexpected twists. In chapter 1 of Matanzas Bay, Quint's helping his friend Dr. Poe, Jeffrey Poe, who's the city archaeologist, doing a survey in the historic section of St. Augustine. And Quint is helping with the digging, and he uncovers a wicker basket, large, like a hamper, and it's definitely not an ancient artifact. Here's how chapter 1 ends. My participation in this dig was not a selfless act. I hope to lose myself in the physical work of scraping and digging as a momentary escape, a form of penitence. Just as Poe reconstructs people's lives by the detritus they left behind, the phone call was a reminder that my life is built on crumbling splinters of guilt, still embedded beneath my skin, like pieces of shrapnel in a combat veteran. One day there will be a final accounting, but until then I'll have to live with a grieving father's phone calls, with his daughter's death, and even worse, the terrible knowledge of my responsibility for my brother's murder on a Long Island shore so many years ago. I breathed deeply through my mouth and heard the mockingbird call again. When I looked up, I saw the bird lift from the tree and fly away. With Poe and the volunteers surrounding me, I removed the lid and stared inside. Immediately, the thought occurred to me that my search for penitence must have taken a wrong turn somewhere. Staring back at me was the bloody head of William Morano. Well, part of ramping up the action in these types of books is the confrontation. The protagonist is always going to butt heads with an antagonist, someone that's trying to keep him from doing whatever mission he's on. Well, Quint does this by encountering the brother of William Morano, who was the vice mayor of St. Augustine. And the brother, Buck Morano, is a sergeant in the St. Augustine Police Department. And he feels that Dr. Poe was responsible for his brother's death because the two of them had an ongoing feud about a development in downtown St. Augustine. And Buck Morano comes upon the scene and he confronts Dr. Poe right away. And Quint tries to step between them. He says, "Hey, wait a minute," I said foolishly, stepping between them. "I'm the one who found the basket, not Dr. Poe." My gallant gesture had the intended effect of diverting the sergeant's attention, and he stared at me as though I was a cockroach crawling over his Christmas ham. Without a word, he dismissed me and turned his attention back to Poe. After more back and forth, Quint jumps in once again and tries to help his friend. "Listen, Sergeant, whatever you may think of Dr. Poe, you can't believe he's capable of murder." I made the mistake of putting a hand on his arm. He whipped it away and gave me his full attention. "Who the hell are you?" he shouted in my face. "I'll need a name before throwing you in jail for interfering with a criminal investigation." I raised both hands in a sign of surrender and backed off. Detective Horgan quickly stepped between us. Looking at his notes, he said, he's the one who found your brother. His name is Quint Mitchell, and he lives in Jackson. Quint Mitchell? Morano spit my name out as though it burned his tongue, and he studied me for a moment before continuing. I know who you are. You're the Jacksonville Beach PI who's involved with that. He paused and seemed to search for words. With that Howard woman. He sneered and turned away from me. I felt a wave of heat creeping along my neck and up my cheeks. I fought to control my breathing, my chest tightening, my hands stiff at my sides. You're out of line, Sergeant. I can understand how it feels to lose your brother, but with surprising speed, his left hand shot out, snatched a handful of my shirt and yanked me toward him. At the same time, his right fist slammed into my stomach, just below my rib cage, and I doubled over, gasping for air. Whew, poor Quint. But this is also part of writing mysteries and thrillers, because you have to be part sadist, if you will, because you push your hero, your protagonist, to the breaking point to see what they're made of. And I did that quite well with Quint in Matanzas Bay. At one point, he almost ends up as a midnight snack at the St. Augustine Alligator Farm. And in Hurricane Island, he's contending with a Category 3 hurricane while searching for a killer. And in the second book in the series, there's the book cover. It's called Bring Down the Furies. I've sent Quint to Allendale, South Carolina, on the trail of a con man that the press has dubbed the heartthrob bandit because he preys on elderly, wealthy women. And in Allendale, he runs afoul of a serial arsonist. Now, in this excerpt I'm going to read, Quint's been staying at a bed and breakfast known as the Magnolia Inn that's run by a sprightly old woman named Verla Covington. He wakes up in the middle of the night and smells smoke. Smoke hugged the wall, flowing to the ceiling and spreading across the room. I tumbled out of bed, frantically searching for my shoes. I slipped on my jeans, stuffed my feet into my running shoes I'd worn that day, not bothering to tie them. Then I grabbed my phone off the table and did what any other heroic citizen would do. I yelled my head off. Fire! Everyone get out now! Easing through the heavy smoke, I made my way past the stone fireplace toward the staircase to the second floor. All around me, flames gnawed at the furniture and walls. I dropped to the floor, ignoring the additional stress on my strained knee, head down to harvest what little oxygen was left. My only thought was reaching Verla and the others trapped upstairs. Above me, tugs of fire branched out across the ceiling in a wide V shape. I watched as pine beams smoldered, then blazed to life, flames snaking along each beam like lit fuses rushing toward sticks of dynamite. Well, Quint survives to fight another day, but it's always a close call. And at the end of each book, I hope I've kept the reader's attention and they've kept pulling for Quint right to the very end as we solve the crime and find the killers. And I hope they look forward to the next book. And I hope also I've given you a little bit of insight into the writer's mind as they're writing these kinds of books and what goes into them. Of course, there's a lot more to that. And remember, the wastebasket is your friend. A lot of pages go into that wastebasket. If you actually want to see the books, I'm at table number 94, space number 94, and I'd love to see you there. And if you have any questions, if we have a minute, I'll be happy to take those.
We probably have room for one question.
Oh, we have room for one question. You're the lucky one.
Yeah, you're the lucky one.
Well, it's a silly question. Do you dream about Quint, and does that influence any of your stories?
That's getting rather personal. My dreams, actually, when I was in the middle of writing some of these books, the plot would revolve in my mind while I was sleeping, and I'd wake up and I'd think, boy, that's a great idea, except I couldn't remember.
Yeah,
Anyway, thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you.